Can I ask a question? Hi, Liviette. Sure. Can you can ask a question? So I figured before we start, maybe we can just like warm up a little bit. Chris, are you also in the Twitch stream?
No, I was just gonna ask. Can you send me the link for it?
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming I have to like mute that one, right?
Yeah, you probably have to mute that one, otherwise it's gonna create this like echo between the two.
Okay, cool. It should be muted.
Awesome. So Astro Boy says it's crystal clear. Um, so yeah, I guess we can really begin.
Awesome.
Awesome. So let me maybe give the audience here just a quick introduction as to what this is and who we are. So I'm the founder and CEO of Only one of the newer startups in the Solana ecosystem. We are an NFT powered social platform. Would love to tell you more about the platform in a second. And this stream really is about, like, I think trying to have an insightful chat with Chris McCann here, our guest, who's super experienced in the VC world. He's been investing in many companies that's really making an impact, not just in crypto, but outside of crypto as well. So I would love to take this chance to thank him for being here. And I would love to learn more from Chris with regards to building companies, creating something long term, and and also investing.
Yeah. Thanks, Leon. Excited to be here, and also excited to learn more about Only One, what you guys are building, and all that good stuff as well.
Cool, awesome. Do you want to maybe give a quick intro to Raise Capital and maybe a bit more about your background so our audience knows a bit more about you?
Sure. So, hey, everybody. My name's Chris McCann, and I'm one of the general partners of Race Capital. Race Capital, we're a venture fund based out here in Silicon Valley, focused on all early stage, so pre-seed up to Series A. And then we tend to be biased towards and are most excited about all things across the various infrastructure layers. So think like core plumbing, anything below applications. So I spend a lot of my time in the financial infrastructure world, DeFi infrastructure, a lot of like the open source finance related things. But we also make a lot of investments around data infrastructure, transaction systems, open source, basically anything core plumbing, anything below applications. That's really our sweet spot. But before this, I spent the last 5 years at Greylock Partners, one of the bigger, larger traditional venture funds here in the Valley, working with guys like Reid Hoffman, who was the founder of LinkedIn, John Lilly, who was the former CEO of Mozilla, and many of the other partners there. And then, but before that, I was actually on the other side. So I was an entrepreneur myself. I started a tech newsletter company called Startup Digest back in the 2009 timeframe. Grew it from 0 to 1 million subscribers, ended up being acquired by Techstars, where it's still owned and operated through Techstars today. It's a little funny, tech newsletters are such a big thing now. Back then in 2009, literally nobody was doing tech newsletters. We were one of the earliest users for Mailchimp when they first got started, and we had to build a lot of this stuff from scratch. But now everybody has a newsletter via like Substack and all this stuff, so it's much more popularly proliferated now than it was ever before.
Awesome. I think having like worked with a lot of other VCs in the industry as well, I find that VCs who have been a builder themselves really give different type of insights. Sometimes VCs can be really good at finances, how we structure the round, how we talk about vesting schedules, how to incentivize the team. But when it comes to building projects, I feel like people who have experience building it really have a different type of insight, right? So just curious, why is it called Race Capital?
Yeah, two things. I guess more on a broader psychological level, and then one more on a tactical level. So the broader level is we really gravitate towards founders who are heavily execution oriented. Speed is one of those things that really conquers all, and I feel like a lot of people, especially in the crypto space, sometimes tend to have very big dreams, big ideas of how they want to change stuff. But when it comes down to actually building the product that people are going to use, sometimes like it's a little bit more lacking in that regard. And so we always bias towards, and we always gravitate towards the founders that are just strongly execution oriented. That was one of the most attractive things that attracted us to Sam and the team at FTX when we backed them in the seed round. Anatoly and Raj in the yes, nice jacket. Anatoly and Raj in the Solana team. The Magliano brothers, Dylan and Ian at Sabre. These guys and these teams, they're just so execution minded. They're just so aggressive on shipping. And we love that, and we really gravitate towards those type of people for the fund itself. On a more tactical level, one of my partners, Alfred, he's really into all things cars, F1 cars, sports cars, exotic cars, regular cars. He's a big car guy. and so Race was a short name, easy to pronounce, and then spoke to one of our firm's hobbies. So that's the more tactical reason.
I see. That's interesting backstory. Couldn't have found that on your website. So yeah, you guys are early investors for Solana and FTX. So like you said, they are really they have really inspirational founders, Sam and Anatoly. I haven't had the chance to meet Sam in person yet. I'm looking forward to that day. But I'm glad to be one of the builders under Solana to build a social platform. And before we move on to more about Only One, I guess the last question for me to you is, what got you guys interested into this field of crypto?
Yeah, this is a bit of a longer story, but let me try to summarize. So when I was at Greylock made a handful of investments, mostly in the Bitcoin space in the 2013-14 timeframe. Back then, the crypto space really was the Bitcoin space, and so that was kind of the biggest purview of what was going on at the time. And so Greylock invested in companies like Coinbase, Zappo, Blockstream, and a handful of others, again, mostly on this Bitcoin layer. And then what opened my eyes up a little bit was a little bit of serendipity. But before, I'm married now and I have kids and all that, but way before all this, I used to live in this big hacker house in Cupertino. And one of my roommates, he wasn't a founder, but he was part of that early core developer team for Ethereum. Mm-hmm. And my roommate, he kept telling me, you need to do the Ethereum ICO. You need to do the Ethereum ICO. Luckily, I listened to him, not as much as I probably should have, but that really kind of pulled me into the area of more Web3 and what was going on in the space. And then in the 2017 timeframe, when I left Greylock, but before Race Capital itself, in 2017, I was one of the earliest users and investors for Binance before the exchange officially launched. In 2018, I was one of the initial investors for Solana back when Anatoly was first starting the project. And through the accumulation of a lot of that, we got to know Sam and the team, mostly through his work at Alameda Research Group. And so we backed them early on from the fund itself in the 2019 timeframe when they first got started. And so, I guess it's been a many year journey. I've seen a bunch of different cycles of this and a bunch of different communities around this. And again, the deeper perspective, both from a financial infrastructure and even a social creator infrastructure perspective, it's really this underlying plumbing that's the most intriguing and fascinating to me.
Yeah, interesting. So I usually, when I talk with other people in the space, I tend to ask them what got them into crypto, and there's really no single type of story. Everyone tend to have a different starting point, and a lot of them tend to just got started with buying Bitcoin, and then somehow they got involved into buying into ICOs, and that's actually my story. And obviously on your end, you're more coming from a supporting the underlying infrastructure type of perspective, right? You're looking at Ethereum and Solana, and have you really looked into the other ICOs around 2016 and 17?
Yeah, I did some, but not a lot. I remember, back in the 2017, there was a huge craze towards ICOs, and it is a fundraising mechanism, and people trying to fund applications and stuff like that. And I did some of them, not a lot of them, but it was always less. It was a little bit less like appealing to me. Again, I always tend to bias towards more of these lower level technical layers and the technical founders. And people like Anatoly, the founder of Solana, he's really special. Like even before that, he was a infrastructure engineer at Dropbox. He was a core developer at Qualcomm. Like he built real large scale protocol systems that used to run all of our CDMA handsets and stuff like that. And so these people in this space are sometimes they're much harder to find. There's a much smaller subset and grouping of these people. And so again, whenever I find anybody like that or with the background like that's who I kind of resonate the most with. And I was less interested in the token mechanism from a pure fundraising perspective. Again, you could use it for that, but that it kind of misses the point of a lot of what this stuff is being built for and what the actual use of the token itself is for itself.
Nice. Awesome. So
yeah.
Maybe we can...
and then I guess in addition to just happy to share more about us, but we'd love to learn more about you as well. How'd you get into the space? Why did you start building Only One? And can you share a little bit more about your background too?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. So I was actually trained as a genetic engineer 5 years ago at Imperial College. My first startup was actually to create milk without cow, and I think there's a lot of competitor in that space today. So after that, I left and I self-taught programming, been working in software and software startups ever since. And around 2016-17, my younger brother, who is currently working at Alameda Research, kind of dragged me into the whole crypto craze, and we got involved in a few ICOs. We bought some different kind of crypto, and that really got me interested because I've always been interested in building something, and this is a new space. What it felt like back in 2016-17 is kind of like when App Store first came out, and everyone's jumping into creating their own mobile apps. And I think I was looking into a lot of the white papers. I'm not so much one of those quote-unquote apes where you just buy into it, right? I kind of want to look into the white paper, how they, what the platform is actually built for, how the token actually work within that platform. And I kind of got skeptical for a while because if you look deeper into why they actually need those utility tokens, a lot of them actually lack utility, at least in my personal point of view. So I always wanted to build something that would actually make an impact and something that actually requires the underlying blockchain technology. So always been waiting for an opportunity or an idea, right? So earlier this year we've seen the NFT boom. I think from last year to this year, NFT sales volume on OpenSea and Rarible kind of went up by 2,800%, which is quite a lot. And that really educated a lot of the retail investors on what NFTs are and what they can do as a technology. But in my personal opinion, again, this might be unpopular, but pure art collectible type of NFTs might start to slow down, right? I think people are starting to see the true value of NFTs, and how digital art is still rather intangible in a way. So I think the next wave of NFTs are going to be heavily dependent on the function, so utility-driven NFTs. You look at gaming, so there's a lot of that, right? These days you have Axie Infinity, Aavegotchi, you have Sandbox, you have Decentraland, all that good stuff. And then for other applications, you can think of stuff that are, that would benefit, might be e-signatures or traceability, or tracking a wine if it's legitimate. That kind of stuff might really help with NFTs. So I've been looking into different business models. As a team, we're looking at different existing real life business models that can benefit from NFTs, and we stumbled across OnlyFans. I think some of the audience, if you're listening, you might have heard of OnlyFans. It's a social platform with gated content, basically. So what they really are doing is allowing creators to sell their content very directly, right? So without having to go through merchandising or advertisements or shout outs, you can directly sell your content. And that's something that's quite attractive, and especially it's already kind of like a decentralization kind of theme. And on the other side, the users actually get a closer connection with the creators themselves as well. So that's sort of the starting point of where we got our inspiration from. But let me emphasize, we're inspired by the business model, not exactly the demographic.
I will ask no further follow-up questions on that standpoint. But I guess to go back to it, given the fact that you were actually reading these white papers and looking into the more technical aspects of these protocols, it does beg the question of why did you guys pick Solana? I mean, there's many other layer 1 protocols out there, even Ethereum itself. Why did you guys gravitate to Solana itself?
Right. First of all, I'm a blockchain atheist, so I'm not like overly fanboying over Solana, even though I kind of am at the moment. So the reason why we picked Solana is really a technical one. We're building a social platform, and that means we require a critical mass amount of users. A lot of users means a lot of interactions with the underlying blockchain. And if you were to use a blockchain that requires you to pay $50 every time you interact with it, it's just not very scalable, because we're dealing with lots of potential microtransactions, and we need to look for a blockchain that can really support that with a high TPS. So Solana became like our blockchain of choice because of its very competitive speed and scalability. And if you look at the blockchain trilemma, you have scalability on the top, and then you also have decentralization and security. And personally, I think Solana is also kind of winning in those regards, right? Because in security wise, if you are a validated node, you're staking your Solana tokens, and if you're misbehaving, they do slash you quite aggressively. So they really encourage the network to be safe and secure, and that can be done by a community of people. And anyone can become a validated node, right? Unlike Binance Smart Chain, which I also like, they have, I think, 21 institutional validator nodes. So to some retail investors, that could be a bit more centralized. So what if those institutions decides to like stop it all at once or something, like nobody knows? So that's the reason why we picked Solana.
Got it. And then going back to your other comment, like with Only One, you guys are really focused on not the pure artistic aspect, but more of these tokens that have more use cases or usage around them, or around the actual creator tokens itself. So one, maybe you could expand on that a little bit. And then two, looking into Only One, you have this very unique concept called the Genesis Nft.
Yeah.
Would love to, I guess, learn more about that and kind of how that fits into the system itself.
Yeah, great. Love to talk about that. So we're not the only social platform in crypto, right? Like there's a lot of other ones like BitCloud, there's Rally, Roll, User. I think we're trying to do something a bit different. So we're in a sense, we're not trying to be better than them, but rather do something differently. Most of them do something they call creator tokens, where every single creator have their own pool of fungible tokens, where the users will be trading them, expecting the creator's popularity to go up and therefore the price to go up, etc. So I think that it's more of leveraging social media to do more trading. So in our platform, we want to flip that script and focus really on social engagement through NFTs. And on our platform, users don't stake their tokens in consensus mechanisms or liquidity pairs. They stake it on individual creators. So every creator on our platform has their own staking pool, and the APY per creator changes according to their activity on the platform. So the more active you are as a creator on the platform, the higher the APY, therefore attracting more retail investors to put their tokens into your pool, and more people will interact with you as a creator as well. Now, where the Genesis NFT comes in, as the name suggests, it's created as the creator joins the platform, and there's only one of them, right? And hence the name as well. So only one Genesis NFT per creator. These Genesis NFTs are very unique, where the owner of this Genesis NFT would earn a split of the staking reward from the total value locked off that creator. So if I'm a creator, my pool has, I don't know, 1 million tokens, and you own my Genesis NFT, then you earn a small split from this pool as well. So in a sense, we're giving the NFT a financial element to it.
Got it. It's really cool. Yeah, because again, as you mentioned, I think most people, when they think of NFTs today, they just think about the artistic expression. So this is a digital representation of a artistic object, whether a photograph, a painting, an animation, or whatever. But it sounds like, in your case, the NFT is a little bit more of like the financial object itself. I'm curious, like, maybe to go back to like basics a little bit, like in your opinion, like I guess, like, what's your definition of an NFT? Maybe not just within only one itself, but even like in a broader context, like, because again, it sounds like you're doing it a little bit more differently than how other people are thinking about it.
I think that's a good question. So a lot of people actually, believe it or not, a lot of people don't actually know what it stands for. So non-fungible tokens, the word fungibility, I think, is the key to the definition of this word. So US dollar is fungible. So my $1 and your $1 can be switched, and we're probably okay with it. But say you have a Chihuahua and I have a Chihuahua, the dog, which we're probably not okay with switching them around, even though they're both Chihuahuas. Right, so that's an example of something that's non-fungible. So in the world of cryptocurrencies, non-fungible tokens can, because of how unique they are, and because of blockchain technology, you can verifiably know that this is unique and who owns it, right? So that gave rise to something they call digital certificates, which can be used to identify that you're the owner of something digital. So that gave rise to the huge CryptoKitties, CryptoPunks, all that sort of digital artwork. So I think most people know NFT as a digital art ownership. Yeah.
Got it. I was going to make a funny joke of, can we fractionalize our chihuahuas, but maybe that's not a good one to have. And then I guess thinking about them either in NFTs as this financial concept or NFTs as this artistic concept, like, what do you actually think makes a successful NFT itself? And then maybe more broadly, like, what do you actually think makes a successful NFT platform in this context?
Yeah, so I think, like I said earlier, I think it's about the utility. I think that in the future is all going to be around the utility of the NFTs. But right now, as we have observed, I think the successful NFT drops, right? Like whether it's purely art form or some song, I think a lot of it has to do with the story, right? Like, I think, for example, CryptoPunks got really popular because a lot of celebrities starts buying into it, and because it's also limited edition, people start to like sort of have that collector mindset, right? And in the real world as well, sometimes a piece of painting is not expensive because of the type of paint or the frame, right? It's really about the story. It's not sometimes it's not even about the technicalities of drawing it. It's about like, oh, the artist behind the scene, he has dementia and whatever. So that's the kind of story that makes these sort of exotic investments attractive. But in the future, I think it's gonna come down to its utility. So you look at recently, like, by the way, this is my opinion, I think we're about to see an NFT summer. Last year we got DeFi summer, and this year we are seeing a lot of NFT projects starting to boom. Axie Infinity is one that really intrigues me. I think in their game, you can buy land, you can buy eggs, you can train monsters, and all of those digital assets are actually NFTs that you can trade with people. So in a way, that's giving it a very unique utility, because people can actually play the game, and by playing the game, you earn more cryptocurrency. So yeah, I think that's what makes it valuable.
Yeah, and then maybe I'll ask you just one other last question on the NFT side. I guess for only one in itself, like I'm curious, like, when are you guys launching? What's next on the roadmap itself? I think also in this live stream, you're doing like an airdrop type of thing. So I guess would love to learn more about the current, what you guys have planned on the roadmap side for only one itself.
Cool. So I think the concept is we're trying to ship frequent rather than ship big. So we are trying to launch feature by feature over the next few months, starting with the alpha, which is going to launch in August, very soon enough. And by the end of the year, like, our focus is really about user adoption and validating the feature by features, if people like it, if they don't like it. So we're not gonna, sort of stick to one playbook, but rather we're gonna see the market's response as we roll out different features. One of the things that we want to do to really encourage user adoption in the long run is a mobile app. So I believe 80% usage of social platforms are on mobile. And I think evidently that's what I do as well. Like I rarely go on the desktop version of Instagram. So that's something that we're trying to develop within the year as well. But I think by Christmas we'll be at least have started the mobile app development. So yeah, I think that's in the short term that's what we aim to be. And over a longer term period, by the next bull run, if the macro cycle continues, that will be 4 or 5 years later. We do want to aim to become the biggest social platform in crypto.
Awesome. I love how you said not just Solana, but all of crypto.
Yeah, so thank you for those questions. Maybe I should return a few questions to you as well, because I've always wanted to learn more about VCs and the world of VCs. Fun fact, when I was in university, one of my job that I was pursuing was into finance, and the end game was to get on the buy side. So naturally, private equities and VCs were like one of my dream job back then. I don't know, maybe 20 years later we'll see what happens. So yeah, maybe we'll start with the basics. I think a lot of the audience here are also retail investors themselves who buy into different crypto and like make investments, maybe trade. My advice would be don't leverage, but let's start with the basics. So how do you define a venture capital?
Yeah, I guess one thing to keep in mind is venture capital is it's a broad definition within the finance sphere that has predated crypto for a long time. Even Greylock, where I used to work at, like the firm is over 60 years old. So these funds have been around for a long time. Really, what it is basically it's a pool of capital from limited partners, where the general partners or managers of the firm, they are going out and finding private companies, which is why it's in the private equity PE bucket. So you're buying equity, typically. I guess tokens change this a little bit, but typically you're buying equity within companies, and you are typically long-term oriented, because the value of these things tend to accrue over longer periods of time. And so the whole reason why you have a fund structure is that it allows you to take all of the illiquidity on for that long period of time. Where, again, typically in the normal world, the thing you would look for is either a large IPO of the company itself or a large M&A transaction itself. And venture capital has a long history in Silicon Valley. Venture capital was the thing that funded all of the semiconductor, Intel, et cetera, industry. It funded all the early internet. It funded the early social networks, the Google, Apple, Facebook, LinkedIn, Amazon, Microsoft. All of these companies, they had early venture capital early on, because typically when you're a small company, like a few people, building something, you typically are not cash flow positive, cash flow accretive. And so, it's a lot harder to get debt financing or like other types of financing. And so venture capital kind of filled that middle gap where, these companies needed to raise capital, but like they didn't have a lot of revenue on the balance sheet. And so this is their way to do it.
Nice. So when you say long period of illiquidity, what I thought of is basically mandatory HODL.
Yeah, it's and again, crypto like changes all of this, but typically when you invest in one of these early stage companies, like let's give an example, like when Greylock invested in Coinbase or whatever, the price of Coinbase itself is not fluctuating on a day-to-day basis. Usually it's marked up when there's a next round of financing, but it's very it's like a stepwise ladder. It's the valuation is set for a while, and then it doesn't really move, and then they do a next round, and it usually goes up, but then it's static. But yeah, the price doesn't move all that much, and so you can hold for long periods of time. You don't really have to worry about the day-to-day price action. Again, crypto changes a lot of this, because even if sometimes the token is locked up or something like that, there's still a price volatility fluctuation of all that, which is a very different dynamic than most venture capital funds are used to. But I do like your definition. It's basically forced force holding, that you're doing on these things, and which is why venture capital funds in general are much more comfortable with longer vesting schedules, because again, like most of the people and firms and institutions are just naturally used to this, because that's the natural implementation of how these things work.
Nice. So I think we gotta learn from the smart money sometimes. Big money is made long term, and definitely don't try to short term trade and beat the market, especially if you're just a part time trader. I think there's a lot of institutional adoption this year, right? Like before this recent little dip, we're starting to see people like Tesla buying into Bitcoin, and then you see obviously MicroStrategies. There's starting to get a lot of like bigger players in the game, and me as a founder who just completed like a fundraise, I also start to observe there are getting more and more like traditional VCs who are starting to look or become open to listen to like pitches in crypto. And that might mean opening up to token rounds instead of equity rounds as well. So what do you think drove bigger VC firms to really start looking into crypto projects?
That's a really good question. Again, I think a lot of the dynamics of the crypto space make this space challenging for venture capital funds. Like even initially when we were looking at when Gray Alec was looking at a lot of things in the Bitcoin space in the 2013-14 timeframe, that there was like the natural obvious question as well: should the firm buy actually Bitcoin itself? And what makes this challenging is I'll give you a thought experiment. Mm-hmm. So, what is the company behind Bitcoin? Who is the founder behind Bitcoin? Who's the CEO of Bitcoin?
It's
is there a board? Can I sit on the board? Am I buying direct issuance? Do I get equity? Is there equity? Like all these questions are super unclear when it comes to a digital asset. Again, some firms look a little bit differently in the fact that most projects that sit on top of core protocols typically will have kind of a company structure and a founder, so it's a little bit easier to wrap your head around. But the more decentralized you get, the more illegible the stuff becomes. And so I think it took a period for people to like understand this and be comfortable with this. And then the other thing that I don't want to speak on behalf of all venture capital funds, but the one of the things they always look for is traction and adoption in the market. Where I think a lot of the early experiments, especially in the NFT and gaming and creator token space, like there wasn't really a lot of there was little pockets of traction and little sort of experimentation, but nothing really hit to large scale. Versus now, with the rise of FTX and Solana and Axie Infinity and Ethereum hitting its sort of stride, and DeFi actually trading large volumes of transactions, like you're starting to see this stuff is independently interesting regardless of the token format of a token underneath or all this kind of complicated stuff. Like these things are actually making material, meaningful impact, and the investment will always follow the founder and the traction. So the people doing the weirdest stuff right now that people don't really understand, if you hit real consumer scale or adoption scale or infrastructure scale, if people start really using your stuff, like the community will follow. And so you're starting to see that dynamic right now where, again, these companies are hitting a scale that is interesting, independent of its token structure.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I see what you're saying in like as it's happening as well. Back in 2016-17, I think a lot of the projects, they sort of start and end inside crypto circle, within crypto Twitter, and nowadays you're starting to see projects that sort of start to spill out into the sort of the no coiners world, right, into the real world. And you'll see, for example, Filecoin with their internet IPFS. Like companies outside of crypto are starting to use it because sometimes it's proven to be an actual superior data storage system. And Axie Infinity, they're actually played by a lot of apparently Filipinos because it's a very economically viable game to play over there. And so yeah, definitely we're starting to see like a pull of crypto projects from like the actual world, rather than projects sort of having to push their use case really hard but still stay within crypto circle. So I think that's definitely a trend that's happening, and maybe in 5-10 years it's going to be more and more common.
Yeah, and it's totally. I think a lot of people unfairly have the criticism of, oh, all this crypto stuff. It's just used by other crypto people. It's not really applicable to the broad world, and that's true for a lot of things. Like a lot of the borrow lending initially was used for margin trading to buy crypto stuff, or derivative trading to buy crypto stuff, or shorting to short crypto stuff. It was all very internal, but you do need the initial bootstrap to get it going, where then when you start to accumulate large pools of capital, then people outside the space will be interested in things like this. And there's already, I won't say the name of company, but there's already projects that are taking the pools of capital in these borrowing markets and lending it out to people who are not in the crypto space at all whatsoever, where it's actually being productively used in society. So this is already starting to happen, again, small scale, but like it's okay to bootstrap this internally within the crypto ecosystem. There's enough people, there's enough funds, there's enough things to do. Yeah. But yeah, by nature, like this stuff will eventually have to get broader and bleed out to the bigger ecosystem. Because again, the more people you touch, the more distributed this thing's going to become.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that one day. Most people in the streets will actually understand crypto. I think we're starting to see a lot of support from not just like private company side, but also from the governmental level as well. Like starting with El Salvador, people are starting to use Bitcoin as real transactions, and some of my friends actually have Visa cards that are tied to their crypto accounts. I think that's amazing, but obviously regulations do have to catch up. Sometimes when the Chan might not like this, but I think regulations are sometimes good. It does cause a short sort of negative sentiment in the crypto circle, but then I think these regulations have to catch up in order for bigger institutions to really catch on and encourage more adoption. For example, like how do you track taxation? Like because government societal like sort of services still need to occur. So if everybody pays with Bitcoin, like how do you actually track taxation, right? So those are just little things. Can't wait to see how it happens in a few years.
I think again, like in the short term, people are going to try to map on existing regulations and put them onto the crypto space, but crypto does change a lot of the core assumptions that we have, and the fact that a lot of these things aren't regionally or state-based or sometimes cross international lines. You do have the mixture of centralized and decentralized and how you deal with that. But the other thing the crypto space really has going for it is everything is built on public open ledgers. And so all this stuff can really be validated, like literally all the way from the beginning of history until now. And so one of the things that's just most unique about this space is like literally almost all of this stuff is mostly open source for the most part. And so if you want to verify yourself, if you want to look at the code, if you want to do security analysis, if you want to backtrace certain things, it's all there. All the analytics are there for you to do so. And so in theory, it should build a much more open, trustful financial system. But again, we do have a longer route to go for this, but the building blocks are there to do this.
Yeah, exactly. I think I think the different projects that start to come on, not just in DeFi and NFT, but also like other infrastructure plays, I think will come in very importantly in the coming years. So speaking of like bigger market picture, let's talk about the crypto market a little bit. Like me from the project side and you from like the smart money side. I think our audience would love to hear, our opinions on the market. So let's just start with the very important question: do you think the bull market has resumed?
All right, debate. I guess I would ask the question is, did the bull market stop? I know there was like a couple week or month period that the market took a dive a little bit, but it seemed to correct pretty quickly, and there's already a new birth of excitement into here. Again, when I think back to the bigger crashes, like, in the late 2017-18 timeframe, when there was a huge haircut on this, and there was a lot of development for a lot of this stuff stopped for a while, or even back in like the 2014-15 timeframe, there was like a huge 80% market crash within the Bitcoin space, and that there was a lot of development stop for a lot of this stuff. And so to me, like, this time feels very different. You have significant capital still coming into the space regardless of the price itself. Like you mentioned, you have traditional institutions, venture capital, large corporations, hedge funds, macro funds still deploying in the space looking for opportunities. You have people still building in the space. You have companies getting to incredible traction. Like, this does not feel like it did not feel like a bear period to me. Although there was a 50% haircut, all of the sort of most critical metrics and building activity still resume for a lot of it. And so again, in this space, you are exposed to more volatility than you are in the traditional market space. But this one did not feel like a bear market to me at all.
Nice. I think I agree with everything you just said. I think a lot of people, when they say this is a bear market, they sort of forgot. They look at how the price went down really quickly for 50%, but they forgot how quickly it went up previously as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the charts over a longer horizon, I think time period is like the key here. I mean, if you zoom really close into like the recent 2-3 months, then sure, the graph looks really horrible and it's just going down, it's bloodbath. But I think over like the past 6 months, right, like or maybe the past year, if you look at the average, like, it's still a really strong uptrend. And I used to be a really technical analysis kind of guy as well. I was trying to do a lot of charts, but I think at some point drawing charts just becomes a form of meditation where you kind of convince yourself that you're right and you start to see things that people don't see. And I think that's sometimes it gets a bit tedious. But in previous bull runs, right, like if you look at like the 2013 or you look at 2016-17, it doesn't go all the way up in a straight line, so it usually has like 40-50% drops during that bull run. It's just when you look at the charts over the long term, you don't see them anymore, or they're so transient that it just kind of happened and then people forget about it. I think this one, like, sure, is a bit longer than the previous ones, but to me it doesn't feel like a bear market. It doesn't have like the same sort of despair as before. So yeah, but I think overall we're in this for the long run, and the short-term price move shouldn't be that much of a factor.
Yeah, and I should give the caveat, like, that there are different funds with different time horizons and stuff like that. So we are a venture capital fund. We have 10-year time horizons for most of these things. We don't really do any trading for most of the projects that we buy. We just tend to hold it and kind of forget about it. And again, with the price up front and center, sometimes it's hard to do that. But really, for a lot of these things, if they are going to get to real adoption scale, and like this stuff is really going to bring innovation to the financial space or the social space, like these projects, the whole ecosystem really should be magnitudes times bigger than what it is today. And so I think sometimes it's easy to get very short-sighted on a lot of these things. But like, honestly, you just sort of need to be a real believer in the things that you back yourself, and you kind of just need to hold and kind of forget about it to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot where I saw this, but I think Warren Buffett once said, when he was asked, how did you accumulate so much wealth? He said, because I'm old. It's a joke because he value invests into things that he believes, and he just basically doesn't sell them or over a very, very long time, right? So I think in crypto, sometimes people do get impatient. The entire industry only existed for 10 years or just a bit more than 10 years, right? So people do get impatient. They want to buy and get rich the second day. They hodl for overnight and they like, hey, where's my Lambo? So I think time horizon is something that we need to really relax and take a...
Yeah, there's a famous, it's not going to be the exact quote, but there was a famous scene at the Warren Buffett does an annual summit where all of his investors, the people who bought into Berkshire Hathaway, would come. And somebody asked them the question of, oh, when is your time, I think they're asking about Coke, like, when is your time horizon to sell for Coca-Cola? Like, when you guys planning to unload your position? And Warren was like, never. Like our plan is to hold this in perpetuity forever. And so that's one of the most powerful positions to be in, because really compound interest on all these things, they accumulate over multiple generations and years. Again, it's not a short-term time horizon type thing. Like really, like the multi-generational wealth is built over this long scale time horizon. And so again, if you have the fortitude or the outlook to do this, like that's really where the majority of all the realized gains is eventually going to come from.
Yeah, for sure. And if you look at the horizon of a lifetime, I think you don't get to see many new sort of asset class being born, during one's lifetime. And, we get to actually witness, the birth of a new industry, crypto with blockchain technology. I think that's something that we should definitely, I would be very bullish on, and, take a longer term bet and not just look at the 4-year cycle or whatever. So yeah, maybe a quick question about tech stock and crypto as well, because I know you're not just in crypto. I believe earlier this year the correlation metrics between the tech stock market and crypto has seen like the peak. I think it was at 0.2 or 0.3 or something. So it became really correlated with for a while. I think Bitcoin really correlated with Tesla, probably because of Elon Musk. But actually, way before, in like a few years ago, I think we even have seen like negative correlation, where the stock market and crypto market sort of hedges against each other. They go opposite ways. So that trend is happening. Do you think we're going to continue to see a increase of correlation between like the traditional tech market and crypto, or maybe because factors like inflation, they're going to be decoupled and become sort of negatively correlated again?
Yeah. Two comments on this. And again, like we mostly focus on early stage projects, before these things are built. Like we're not taking large macroeconomic bets. But I guess two comments from my perspective on this is, one, as these assets get integrated more within the traditional economy, like you could even see it now today, like Bitcoin is being treated as it's on the price ticker for CNBC when people are talking. Like, this thing is in the full financial, field for most things. It's not being treated as these weird, obscure assets. Like people definitely know about this and it's out there. And as more and more people hold this asset, it's going to correlate, again, unfortunately, more and more to the traditional world, because it's going to be treated like another financial asset, which is going to be in the portfolio allocation bucket for capital allocators across many different asset classes. And it's going to have to be closer correlated to all the other stuff that goes out there. Again, I think we're still very early from this perspective. I don't think we're there yet. I still think these things can diverge. And especially when you look at the non-Bitcoin assets, like a lot of these things tend to do their own cycles based on their own internal dynamics. So by no means are we anywhere close to that. But yes, as these things get bigger and bigger, I think these things are going to have to be subsumed by the general economy. The other second one, which you kind of asked, but I guess to address specifically, is post the 2020 COVID crash, when the government did a lot of, or at least the U.S. government did a lot of intervention into the markets. This really pushed up asset prices across the board. So just like you've seen crypto have a huge meteoric rise up since then, you've also seen stocks move up in the same categories, real estate move up in the same categories, debt move up in the same categories. And so I do think there's also a broader economic instantiation here of, there's a lot of capital around the world looking for any amount of yield to find, any amount of hard assets to have, and diversifying out of core cash. And so all asset classes above the board are being priced up. And you're seeing that in all of the public valuations and all the way down the scale to private late stage valuations, private mid stage, private early stage. There's kind of a repricing of all this stuff. So again, like as much as we in the venture capital industry like to feel that we are untethered from the broader macroeconomy. The honest reality is like we're not. We're all part of this larger context which is happening at the same time.
Yes, I mean, we're all, functioning little parts of the bigger machinery, which is the society. And sometimes when the society, the machine as a whole, is not doing so well, everybody wants to risk off, and that includes crypto and stocks and fiat, right? And like you said earlier, I think a lot of the listed companies, such as MicroStrategies, are starting to include Bitcoin and obviously Tesla into their portfolio, right? So naturally, we'll see like a correlation increase between these companies and crypto. So probably as the industry grow, the two might just become more and more aligned. But we'll see how it unfolds in the near future. Let's just finish this with one last question. Where do you see Bitcoin in 10 years? And do you see the flippening happen where Ethereum beats Bitcoin or any other coin?
Let me take the first one. Again, I think it's already happening to some extent, although I think you will see it even more. I think Bitcoin will be treated as its own independent asset class, where Bitcoin is an asset that not only companies own, but sovereigns own, large pension funds, large sovereign wealth funds, countries as a whole. You could even see crazier things like wholesale countries, like we're already seeing, also adopt Bitcoin as a whole. Like it's almost this neutral, independent asset that no one country or company or anything controls. It's going back to, I guess the meme way to say it is Bitcoin really is digital gold, but it really is. It's this own independent asset that people can have, and you're not trusting any one party. You're trusting the system as a whole to keep functioning. Which again, to me, it's different than Ethereum or Solana or anything of the like, where Ethereum's really, it's the computational layer where you can construct and build a lot of these applications with smart contracts. And with Solana, it's really about the throughput and transaction speed. And so I know in the people in the crypto space tend to also be very tribalistic about things. Yeah. If I'm a Bitcoin person, I hate Ethereum. If I'm an Ethereum person, I hate Solana. If I'm a Solana person, hey, Solana.
Just because the bags are holding.
People like to pit them all against each other. And is Solana competing against Ethereum? Is Ethereum competing against Bitcoin? Again, I think these things can, because we're in the space, we see it so directly. But when you view it from the outside, these things can coexist. These things are going after different use cases. The space is big enough to have multiple winners in this. Like, for example, in the tech industry, you don't only see one company that won all of tech and nobody else exists. Even within the largest tech companies, you see Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and they all coexist. They all fight each other. They are all competitive, but they have their own independent niches and independent things that they're going after. And so I really think, again, if this space is ultimately a new asset class, a new technology, a new field, Web3, all the stuff we believe it's going to be, there's going to be many, many, many multi-generational winners. It's not only going to be one of them.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I think just like the internet bubble, there might have been 1,000 projects coming out with something like something.com. But at the end, the winner will come after the sort of the wave of bubble and really thrive over the long term. And I think in crypto, people I agree, there's a lot of people with tribalism, so they really support one thing almost blindly. And I think there are really different categories of crypto projects right now. So obviously we have smart contract blockchains, so Ethereum, Polkadot, Solana, all that good stuff. You have like store of value like Bitcoin, you have transfer of value like Nano, you have privacy coins like Monero, who I think I think yesterday there was a news that they have a bug actually, but I'm not sure. And there's a lot of different dApps with their own variable, like different functions. So definitely sometimes in the later future, we'll see winners come out. And I agree with you saying that crypto is digital gold as well, but I have a small story to share about that. Like personally, I think inflation is quite real, and it's It's personally, I think it's kind of almost not right that 40% of the USD was printed in the last 12 months, right? So the origination of currency was because there's this problem in the trading world called coincidence of wants. So I have rock, you have fish. Now I want fish, but you don't want rock, and that's a problem. So we need a third person that says, hey, why don't both of you trade me for this piece of shell, and you guys can now trade with shells, right? So that's really like a currency to solve that coincidence of wants. And then later on, there's different types of currency that occurred. Like currency has a few key characteristics. Number one, it has to be scarce. Number two, it needs to be durable. And number three, it needs to be divisible, right? So that's really what gave rise to choices like even the tulips. But I think for the longest time, people use gold. Now, the only problem with precious metal is that it's real heavy. So if I want to buy your house, I might need to have a whole wagon full of gold. So that's dangerous and it's not efficient. So some genius came along saying, hey, why don't you store that gold in my bank, and I'll give you a piece of paper that represents those gold. And so anytime you get this paper back to me, I'll give you back your gold. So that gave rise to the gold standard, and gold-backed currency was born, and that worked. Obviously, that worked. So I think around a century ago, I'm not sure when, but the U.S. government decided to remove the gold standard and allow them to print money all they want, and that's in the name of supporting the economy. So I think that idea didn't really sit well with me. So I think what Bitcoin sort of stands, right, like the ideology behind it is that it's scarce, because obviously there's 2.1 million of them ever, and it's durable and it's also divisible. So it really satisfies the currency concept. Whether or not Bitcoin is going to be used for microtransactions, that I'm not sure, but I think describing it as digital gold is very accurate. Sorry, that's just my little story to share. I was reading that online somewhere earlier.
Cool, awesome. Shall we take some questions before we end?
Yes, sure. I just looked over at the chat, and I think we have quite a few questions. Are you also seeing them?
No, for some reason I cannot. Okay. I see the suggestion box, although I don't see the actual.
Cool. All right. I think I'll just choose 5 questions. I'll give like lightning fast answers to them, and to those questions that were answered, I'll DM you. I think you can. There's a DM function on Twitch, and we'll handle the airdrop from there. So we're gonna airdrop 1,000 like tokens within 1 week after the IDO, and that has to be an SPL address. So have that ready if your question was picked. I'm just gonna scroll up and pick 5. Okay. Some of them are quite long questions. Right. The only question I have is, what are some overlooked things in entertainment and social network business that can benefit from the implementation of NFTs, and haven't seen any or few ideas being developed for them? What are some overlooked things in entertainment and social networks? I think one of the original reason of why we started this as well is because I think a lot of creators want to sort of get rid of the middleman in order to monetize their content. We see a lot of projects trying to do that as well. I mean, even from earlier 2017, there's Mithril, there's other social platforms online that try to reward creators directly or reward social media users directly. I think that's definitely one thing that a lot of businesses are overlooking. And one of the reasons why OnlyFans is so successful is because they allow their creators to monetize their content very directly by selling them. And it's not always adult content either. Like there's actually fitness trainers on there selling programs. And I think that's one thing that we're trying to tackle as well. So thank you so much for the question, Ladriel. Cool. Will only one have any type of censorship on content creators? Will there be some jurisdiction by you guys on the content that's uploaded, or everything will be just out there on my dashboard? I mean, everything. And I chose if I want to view it or not. Will there be categories? or for explicit content? So that's a good question. I think Chris might have asked me this earlier on in one of our early meetings as well. So we do have limitations. We don't want our platform to sort of, because the inspiration came from OnlyFans, we didn't want that to be the limiting factor of what this can become. We definitely want our users to see this with a lot of potential. So initially, the creators in our alpha platform, we're gonna choose like people from different categories such as fitness, music, gaming, crypto, and lifestyle. So we're gonna have different types of content, and initially in the alpha, we're not gonna have categories, but in the future, we definitely will roll out different categories. And if explicit content were to be implemented, that will be 18 plus, and therefore that category will have to be, there will be an age wall. So thank you, Astro Boy, for that question. We'll go for 3 more. Leviat. Does Only One currently work with multiple partnerships? Can you tell us about your partners? What are some important milestones? Cool. So I think we still are a rather early stage company, so most of our partners are our investors. One of our lead investors is Alameda Research, who's very close with Solana and FTX. So it's sort of like one whole ecosystem family in Hong Kong. So currently I'm in Hong Kong, and most of these guys are in Hong Kong as well. So I think these partnerships are really helpful in helping us building the projects because they supported many successful projects in the past. And also Genesis Block and Liquify Labs and NGC Ventures, the list goes on. So a lot of them really shared a lot of insights into how to build projects successfully. And other partners will be announcing soon, so do stay tuned on our Twitter and our Telegram groups. Thank you so much, Leviat. We'll just pick 2 more. Okay, Carmen Car Monkey. What features are you going to start and why did you choose those? So we're going to roll out Genesis NFT and creator staking pool. I think those are the easiest starting point to really showcase the unique selling point of our platform. It's really about having the creators being able to grow their audience by incentivizing them and sharing the sort of monetary benefits of participating in the social network as well. So the theme of democratizing social economy is what we went for. So Genesis NFT and staking pool is what we went for in the alpha. Thank you so much. And then Tokyo Wolf. Right now there's a lot of NFT projects going on. Some of them make their own success, some of them did not. How confident are you with your project? Is there anything unique in your project that you can give? So I'm confident. And that's it, period. End of answer. No joking. So yeah, we're trying to do something different. So there's a lot of NFT projects out there, that's true. Most of them are simple marketplaces and art collections, NFT drops, sometimes randomized attributes kind of stuff. And there's a lot of gaming NFT projects that's very successful. So we're trying to build a NFT powered social platform. Even that, there's a few competitors out there, but like I said earlier, they're competing in something called creator tokens, and we try to do something different by implementing Genesis NFT and staking pool for creators where they can actually share the benefits. So one last question. Sorry?
I was just going to add one other thing too. I know you've addressed it many times, but to me, the social space in the crypto field is one of the most underdeveloped spaces. Gaming's kind of getting a little bit of recognition now. The financial applications have been explored a lot. The social space, in addition to what Only One is doing, again, it's one of the more unique areas that really haven't been fleshed out, where there isn't a lot of core experimentation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think at least none of the crypto social projects have taken off fully. I think right now, if you look at the highest amount of users, that's probably BitClout. But I have my opinions about them. They're really good at what they do. So I think we're trying to do something different. And I want to pick one last question from a different user, if that's possible, but I feel like I've answered most of them. You know what? Maybe the last one can come from Chris. So we don't pick the same person again. Chris, maybe you can finish off this live stream with just one last question.
Sure. I guess, yeah, if I'm asking it to you more about only one specifically, I think you mentioned some of the broader partners in addition to investors. I'm curious if there's any specific creators like you're really excited for to see on the platform itself.
Okay. Are you asking about existing creators that have onboarded the platform behind the scene, or do you mean in the future?
I guess like what are the either a specific person like you're really excited to see about could be onboarded currently, or somebody like you're in discussion with or in the future, or if maybe not a specific person like a certain type, an artist, music, photography, gaming type stuff. I'm curious like what's the category of creator like you're the most excited about?
So personally, I'm actually very into music. I like going to music festivals. I enjoy, EDM music, and one of the guys that I know, as in I know of, Steve Aoki. So I like his music. I've been listening to it for a very, very long time. I also know that he happens to be interested in NFTs. So, if for some whatever reason, Steve Aoki, you're watching this stream, I would love to get in touch with you. And I would love to get backstage one day with you sometimes. Anyway, thank you so much, Chris, for that question. And thank you for the audience for staying for, someone just said Taylor Swift. Maybe Taylor Swift. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much. This is actually one of my first stream ever in my life. Thank you so much for being here, Chris, for taking that time. I know it's early in the morning. Is there anything you want to say before we finish off?
No, it's just thanks for having me. And if anybody interested in social stuff, you should definitely reach out to Leon and what they're doing. And if anybody's working on any new crypto projects in the space, you're welcome to reach out to me. Chris McCann on Twitter, McCannatron. You can find me, or on just chris@race.capital. Feel free to ping me anytime.
Sounds good. Awesome. Let's end it here. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye.